Hello. What I would like to do today is to cover the differences between the two most popular choices of sanitation for hot tubs, which would be chlorine and bromine. So the difference between chlorine and bromine, the first thing to know is that chlorine is an oxidizer and bromine is an ionizer. What that means is that chlorine works by attacking the chemical and literally killing it from the inside out, and sanitizing the tub that way, while bromine works by bonding itself to the contaminant and then breaking it down that way. So as a result, chlorine tends to be a faster and quicker sanitizer and cleaner, which is one of the reasons why it's such a popular choice with pools. But chlorine, that said, however, chlorine does come with a number of drawbacks, particularly in a hot tub-based application, and I'm going to go ahead and cover those. Chlorine has a tendency to be more volatile, which as a result, it tends to be a little more tricky to keep your water parameters balanced. You're having to tend to mess with it a little bit more to get it tweaked right, to make sure that, you don't have too little sanitizer or too much sanitizer in there with the chlorine. So that's one of the biggest drawbacks to it, is that you tend to have to play with the water parameters a little bit more to get it balanced right. So you're not going from one extreme, which is burning the skin and, coming out with really low pH and all sorts of crazy things going on with having too much chlorine in your tub. Or almost worse would be having too little in there and then getting one of the various skin rash conditions that can come out, or bacterial conditions, which are nasty, nasty things to deal with. Bromine, on the other hand, as mentioned, is not quite as quick. But because it's a bit more stable, particularly in a heat-based application, it tends to be longer lasting. Chlorine tends to burn off very quickly, so you're having to dose it more frequently, whereas bromine, on the other hand, even though the water's hot, it tends to break down more slowly, so as a result, you don't have to quite mess with it as much. You're not having to dose as much in order to keep it doing its job, because it lasts longer in a heat-based application. So the other things to consider are that chlorine produces that lovely waste product known as chloramines, which is what gives you that lovely quote-unquote pool smell. If you like me and you really don't care for that, bromine is a much better choice, because bromine, it will produce a little bit of an odor to it, but it's not like, you take off the lid and immediately, as soon as the steam comes out, you're hit with a massive dose of that pool smell, from chloramines, the waste product from chlorine as it breaks down. So, in addition, as mentioned, bromine tends to be easier to keep balanced in heat-based applications, more stable. So you're spending a little less time tweaking chemicals and making it work. The other thing is that chlorine tends to be more caustic. As mentioned, it tends to be more volatile as well, and as part of the nature of that, people who have sensitive skin, sensitive eyes, sensitive throats, you don't even have to go underwater for the people with sensitive eyes, nose, and throats. A lot of times, even just turning on the jets and bubbles and things like that, and just the errant splash in the face or the steam coming up, can cause people to have problems. Those with asthma, those with, eczema, various different skin or respiratory issues. Bromine is, I would say, don't even bother with chlorine, just go with bromine, as it's a lot easier on the skin. It's a lot easier on the respiratory system. When I go to a public pool and I can tell that they've, really, are near a dosing time or whatever it might be, and they got all those chloramines in there from the waste product of everything breaking down, I can tell immediately, because, it starts burning in my eyes, nose, and throat. even just being in, an indoor pool area where that smell is really concentrated, it really affects my sinuses. Doesn't do good things to my skin either. So as a result, I tend to use bromine. Now, I'm not saying that bromine can't, dry out your skin or anything like that. It can. But the good news is that generally speaking, once you get out, and you clean up or whatever, if you use a moisturizer after you get out of the tub, then usually speaking, you don't have too much of a problem. If you are, or you have a family member who is, has one of these conditions, and once again, I would recommend bromine. And then generally speaking, for people who want to spend less time messing with their water parameters, I would recommend bromine. So you just have to wait a little bit longer for it to do the initial sanitation. And after that, if you stay on top of dosing it, it's really easy to do. I use a method that was taught to me by my brother-in-law about 20 years ago, which was, you just take a spoonful, a small spoonful of bromine granules after each use and put it in there and run the jets and let it all mix up. Or you can pre-mix it in water first and then dump it in the tub, and that works too. Or what you can do is get, 1 or 2 tablets if you have something like a Chem Connect or a floater for your tub, and just use it that way. And usually speaking, after the initial dosage to, get the tub up and running, once you start, just doing the maintenance dosages, the water will be fine. You're not going to end up in a situation where you've got too much or too little sanitizer. It pretty much just balances itself and takes care of itself with bromine. Chlorine, as I said, can be a little more tricky in that respect. So personally, I would say that bromine is just the better overall sanitizer for a hot tub and heat-based application of the two. So, but obviously, you're going to go with what you find available or whatnot. I will say this. I've seen lots of issues with people who use chlorine in their hot tub, particularly those are the folks who are in inflatable hot tubs, because chlorine, for whatever reason, tends to be the more popular sanitizer choice promoted by the companies, and also just the fact that a lot of people simply aren't aware of bromine. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video, is to try and help educate people and let them know, hey, these are the options, and this is probably a better option overall. The other issue is that, so they end up going straight for chlorine, and then what ends up happening is I see more cases where people are dealing, with the two extremes, with the, people coming out, with their poor kids, burned on the skin with, or with those lovely bacterial skin issues that can develop, the various different diseases that you can pick up if they underdose it or go too long between dosing on chlorine. I don't see that with people who run bromine in their tubs. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying that the odds of you keeping your tub stable with less work involved is definitely higher with bromine than it is with chlorine in a hot tub based application. And that's all I've got, and thanks for watching.